So I bench 405, and to this day, overhead press is still a very humbling exercise for me personally. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about why overhead press is a much more superior and underrated lift compared to bench press. Because let's all be honest, bench press is a lot more easier to fake than overhead press, and let me explain why. But before we get into today's video, if you want to learn how I was able to overhead press 200 pounds within just 2 to 3 months of training, here's my workout program right here. This is the same workout program that I use and designed myself to explicitly help with strength training and hypertrophy. All right, back to today's video. Look, I love bench press more than the other guy. Yes, I've been one of those dudes to ask many times, how much do you bench, bro? There's a reason why I spent 2 years of my life chasing that 405 bench naturally. But we have to, come to an agreement that overhead press is much more superior. One of the main reasons being, well, when you're overhead pressing, you don't have a bench to lay down on. You don't have structural support when you're pressing that amount of weight over your head. All right, so you're using unfiltered, just straight up strength, your own personal strength. You're not being supported by any structural unit or anything like that. Another thing is leg drive. When you are bench pressing, a lot of people, like one of the biggest tips to bench press more is incorporating leg drive into your bench. You don't have that when it comes to strict overhead pressing. Again, you're using unfiltered, just pure raw strength. Another reason why overhead press is king when it comes to upper body strength. And this is the part that most people seem to miss. When you are pressing overhead, your core is not only engaged, but it's the only thing actively keeping you from folding backwards. Your legs and your glutes are stabilizing muscles for your whole base, and your shoulders are going through a much more longer range of motion without the support of a wall or another structural unit, aka a bench. So these are multiple muscle groups firing at once. Before we talk about pressing strength, bench isolates way more versus overhead press that integrates everything. And if you want proof of that, go do a seated overhead press machine after doing a strict barbell standing overhead press. And you're going to see it's dramatically easier. And you're going to ask why? Well, it's just because you remove the stabilization demand. When you are now doing a seated overhead press machine, you're just targeting and isolating your shoulders. Whereas when you were doing a strict barbell overhead press, you are not only working your shoulders, but you're also working everything underneath, which is a telltale sign that this is a much more superior upper body lift compared to your conventional bench press. So today I overhead press and I decided to only just work up to 185, and you can see me doing that right here. And not only did I feel it in my shoulders, I felt it everywhere. You can't see it now because my back is facing towards you, but my core was engaged. Best believe that. Not only that, my glutes and my legs were stabilizing my whole base, so I just don't fall right the hell over. Again, there's no wall or no base or structure just keeping me upright or supporting me in any way, shape, or form. Because this lift, the strict overhead press, is unforgiving. There's no room for cheating. This lift either determines on how strong you are or how weak you are. And that's another reason why I think it's on top and superior when it comes to determining actual upper body strength compared to the overall bench press. And now we're going to talk about why most people skip this lift. And one of my biggest things is probably because a lot of people don't know about it. I mean, as someone who has been lifting for since my whole life, but started getting into weightlifting and powerlifting pretty recently, I've never really ever thought about overhead pressing. I knew it existed, but it really never crossed my mind. And I think that's how the most people think about it, right? In my gym, even though I go to a much more hardcore warehouse gym, I still don't see anyone overhead pressing. Obviously it's a much more, I wouldn't say it's a smaller niche, but it's really among more people who are into strongman type of working out, right? Or older bodybuilders, just people who are coming from an older era. So not only is it just, an exercise you don't see often, it's just among, a much more smaller niche. And secondly is just because it's not as flashy as bench press. I mean, how many times have you been asked, how much do you bench, bro? I've never once in my life been asked, how much do I overhead press? Probably except from you guys who are more into or more tapped into weightlifting and strongman stuff than I am. So not only is it, kind of more niche kind of thing, it's just not as flashy or mainstream and appealing when it comes to bench pressing, which is my thoughts on it. But wrapping this video up, as someone who's been bench pressing for a long time, I honestly wish I started overhead pressing around the same time as well. I can only imagine what my overhead press would be now, just by the fact that I've naturally got to a 405 bench. But you know, coming to like overhead press, it has been a very humbling experience. It's something I wish I really picked up sooner. And it's just a really rewarding lift as well, because when you're pressing something overhead, you need to understand you are in fact very strong, right? Imagine overhead pressing 225 over your head. You're overhead pressing an obese, like 5'9" average American male over your head. Like, you are a strong motherfucker, especially if you're doing it for reps. And I think it's a lot more, it is statistically way more impressive than a 315 bench, probably even more impressive than a 360 to 385 bench press as well. And I can't wait to get to those kind of numbers and see what I can do there. But again, this is a video kind of just, you know, putting some light onto overhead pressing, and I really think a lot of people should start incorporating it in their training, because again, it's an exercise that is not only fun, but it's very rewarding, since it's, you know, has a lot of real world applications to it. There's a reason why firefighters train it. Even some first responders such as policemen train this exercise. It's just very rewarding, and it helps you with day-to-day tasks. But again, that's today's video. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down in the comment section below, and please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you guys, and hope you guys have a good day.